Hey friends, it's Orf here and thank you for stopping by. Today we have yet another album review and we are looking at Smile by the one and only Porter Robinson. Porter Robinson is an artist I've been listening to since 2011, 13 years at this point. Being a middle schooler when Skrillex came out with the Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites EP in 2011, I was quickly swept up into the dubstep craze. I immediately started listening to a lot of other subgenres of electronic music and was simultaneously classifying all of them as dubstep because I didn't know any better. Deadmau5, Skrillex, Daft Punk, dubstep, all of it. God, I was such a dumb middle schooler, but I am happy I was able to discover so many artists at the time. One thing I did, being a superfan, was focus on any artists signed to Skrillex's record label or promoted on his Facebook page. This is how I discovered artists like Zedd and Seven Lions before their mainstream explosion. Also plenty of more underground electronic artists like 12th Planet, and even some that wouldn't really fall under the Skrillex genre umbrella, but were fantastic anyway, such as 100 Waters. And one of those artists that I discovered at this time was Porter Robinson and his Spitfire EP. Pretty sure the first song I ever heard by Porter was actually the Knife Party remix of his song Unison, which still slaps to this day. So yeah, I discovered many of these artists at a young age, during their inception in some cases. And while some faded into obscurity and some became very mainstream, one name that stuck around and successfully built a massive community was Porter Robinson. So I've been here through almost all of it: Spitfire, Language, Easy, Worlds, Shelter, Nurture, and now Smile. And Smile, to me, like a lot of you, did start out as a bit of a curveball. To be fair, Nurture was and still is one of my favorite albums of all time, so with the bar set so high, I understood that I couldn't just expect his next project to make me feel the same way that Nurture did. If Nurture was the peak, then that's okay. But actually, it's the style of Cheerleader, which incorporated more pop guitar and hyperpop sounds into the Porter Robinson mantra, that left me with a bit of a question mark over my head. Since 2012-2013, Porter has been building himself up to be the king of this tranquil, otherworldly, anime AI sound that almost seems to transcend reality. Cheerleader was clearly a departure from that. It was more stripped down, more simple. Porter was using his real vocals. But honestly, that's fine. I loved Cheerleader. I could tell this was the beginning of Porter's I don't give a fuck, I'm just gonna have fun era, and hey, sounds great. I'm all here for it. I can see why Smile started to divide the fan base a bit, but as the singles continued to roll in, I was still vibing. Knock Yourself Out was a little weird at first, but it's a fun, cute jam that does indeed make me smile. And some of you already know how I feel about this song, but Russian Roulette, wow. It's 6.5 minutes and it deserves every single second of that runtime because it blew me away, pulling in more meaningful tones that would not be out of place on Nurture. So when the singles are great, the big question becomes, will the album continue that level of quality? And honestly, the answer is yes. Even though many Porter fans seem to have issues with this record due to its departure from his transcendent vibe into a more party pop tone, I don't think it's that much of a departure from Nurture. The new elements in Smile are at almost the same level of quality and depth as those on Nurture, and even Worlds for that matter. And there are elements of Nurture sprinkled throughout this record. In almost every track on this album, at some point a synth or a melody will pop in, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of like this track or that one from Porter's discography. There's definitely an influence here. I guess the biggest problem I had with this record on first listen was that it starts to drag a bit towards the end. There is a higher concentration of energy and complexity in the first leg of the record, which means that the second half, while just as emotional, sounds a little less impactful, especially the final track, Everything to Me, which felt less interesting than Easier to Love You and Year of the Cup, despite having similar aesthetics and being on kind of the same dynamic level. It's also longer than every track on this record aside from Russian Roulette, so it does kind of suck that probably my lowest point on the record is at the very end. Leading up to that point, we have Mona Lisa and Is There Really No Happiness, which, while not quite as good as the singles, are still very entertaining. Structurally, Mona Lisa kind of reminds me of Get Your Wish, and Is There Really No Happiness reminds me a lot of Mother. However, they are slightly lesser versions of those tracks from Nurture. While they have elements that I love, I guess I'm just kind of missing that magical melody or lyricism that touched my heart the way Nurture did on first listen. But they are very enjoyable and definitely worth more than one listen. The only other track with a noticeable downside is Kitsune Maison, which, while fun and light-hearted similar to Knock Yourself Out, tends to drag towards the end. I suppose it just gets a little more repetitive and lacks kind of an edge to it. But I stand by just about every other song on this record. Everything else on here presents glistening, beautiful instrumentation, sometimes lighthearted and fun, other times slow and meaningful, and the lyrics dive into topics related to Porter's relationship with himself, the people closest to him, and most notably, his fans. Every time I listen to Knock Yourself Out, it gives me a sensation of innocence and a break from life's worries, so to speak. Perfect Pinterest Garden sounds like the end credits to a kids movie or a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and I love every second of it. Year of the Cup slows the record down to a reflection point and offers some of the most well thought out song structure and lyrics on the album, guaranteed to spark emotion in almost anyone who listens to it. And of course the same goes for Russian Roulette, which is a roller coaster of emotions related to Porter's life and rise to fame, and also thoughts of death and ending it all. And I'm sure this one has brought many fans to tears. And need I even mention Cheerleader? This song is amazingly catchy, incredibly fun, and makes me want to move even more than most of the tracks on the Brat album by Charli XCX. You know, I think it's great that Smile stands out so much at a time when hyperpop, while maybe not necessarily on the way out, has definitely passed its peak, and at a time when pop music in general is just going crazy, Porter somehow finds a way to break through the crowd and give us something unique. The only reason I wouldn't score this one quite as high as Nurture is 1, Nurture does not drag as much towards the end, and 2, I have a personal connection to it. But the cohesiveness and the quality that Porter is known for is all here just as it was on Nurture. This album won't just make you smile because it's funny and goofy at points, it'll also make you smile because it makes you reflect on your own life and realize just how beautiful life is. So from me, Smile gets an A-. There are a handful of moments that drag a bit, and it might lack some of that magic and novelty that Nurture had upon its release, but that doesn't change the fact that most of this record meets that high bar that Porter Robinson has set for himself. So those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours. Throw them in the comments. I will read everything, I promise. And with that said, I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, and see ya.